You ready? Okay, good evening. Welcome everybody. Welcome here in beautiful Factory Berlin, Görlitzer Park, in our beautiful cinema. It's great to see real people again, but also a warm welcome to our friends out on YouTube who have joined us via the live stream. And yeah, it's great to know that you're with us today. My name is Rob Gierke. I'm the founder of Purenacity. That's my business consultancy, focusing on purpose-driven brand building, helping companies to transition from the old to the new paradigm. I'm also one of the captains of the Factory Berlin Sustainability Circle. And the Factory Sustainability Circle is a community of entrepreneurs, of coaches, of consultants, of artists, writers, change makers in general, who meet up, who do projects together, who organize events together, who inspire each other, who go on excursion together to museums, to innovative companies, and who just simply support each other on our individual and our collective journeys. And that's a lot of fun. And since June, we've been on our road to the Global Goals Jam. And you might wonder, what is the Global Goals Jam? Well, it's the biggest hackathon in the world focusing on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And it will be happening in over 100 cities around the world. Among these, also Berlin. So we used this platform to curate content and to organize events for the past couple of months. We started back in June. We started with energy. Please come in. Make yourself a seat, yeah. So back in June, we started with the energy theme. Then we transitioned into consumer activism in July. We went into health and well-being. Here we go. And then finally now, right before the event, right before the Global Goals Jam this weekend, we are now into the very important topic of circular economy. Circular, the wheel, what does it mean? I mean, you find it everywhere in nature, right? So we talk about the circle of life. We talk about birth and death, growth, decay, ebb and flow of life. And some of you might know Fibonacci's formula. You find it in the shells of snails, it's the spiraling galaxies, but also the planets circle around the sun, and the electrons spin around the nucleus of the atom. So it's inherent. The circle, the spiral is inherent to nature in and of itself. And wisdom cultures know that. They talk about the wheel of Dharma, the chakras, the round dances of the indigenous tribes, the mandalas, or the primordial spiral. And guys, a linear system, be it an economy or any freaking linear system, is always just within a bigger circular system. And whether humanity will be part of that bigger circular system or not is up to us, to our generation, to all 8 billion people who live on this planet right now. Because here in Western economy, we got Earth Overshoot Day, we got consumerism, we got waste, pollution, and climate change. And those are all strong symptoms that we have to radically change, that we have to transition to an economy which works on circular principles, which works on a systemic approach. And tonight we have 6 very interesting, inspiring speakers here with us, who have dedicated their lives to this circular economy in different positions, working on the same change team, on the same transition team, but taking different aspects of it. And I think that's so inspiring. So they'll tell you about what they do concretely in their daily lives, how they work, what they do. But they also tell you about the personal journeys, about their aha moment, about their awakening to this, And who in the audience here had this personal aha moment at one point in time? We cannot go on as we do. Who? Oh, a couple people. Okay, yeah. All of them. There's a couple cell phone searchers back in the... So, but I certainly did have my aha, my awakening. And it was 4 years ago, you know. And I had a privileged life in corporate. And 4 years ago, I left a global sports brand with 3 stripes, where I worked in marketing for 14 years. And only after I dropped out of this, I realized that I had been part of the second dirtiest industry in the world, after fossil fuel. The second dirtiest industry in the world, apparel and footwear. Responsible for a total of 10% of all carbon emissions on this planet. Didn't know it back when I was in the wheel, in the hamster wheel. It took me to get out of this, you know. And this realization then brought me to this guy, and that became part of me, you know. It's like this eventually then became part of me. That's why I'm called Polar Rob Bear. And now, you know, working off some karma, 14 years on the dark side, now I have to work a lot to get a couple of bonus points back, and so promoting circular economy a lot. After each talk, like Charlotte already said, we have a 10-minute Q&A, because we wanted to keep it very casual, very conversation-like. There's a microphone here for everyone who is on site. So once you want to ask a question, raise your hand, then put your mask on, walk up to the microphone, and through your mask, I'll demonstrate this for you, you ask to the best possible or in the clearest way your question. Usually for me it sounds like blah, 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 blah. And then I get a what? So, but you do your best thing to ask your question in a clear manner, and if there's should be a need, I repeat it for you. And then as we're live streaming, we have our YouTube friends with us. I'll take the questions from YouTube and I read them out loud, and then the speakers will answer the YouTube questions as well. So we got a real hybrid feel, and send some love to our YouTube friends as well. I think this is all the dues I had to work off, because that's what's called a due. Now, without further ado, first of all, thanks for being with us on a nice summer evening, and probably one of the last ones here in Berlin. So that means a lot that you come to a closed room, which is pretty dark, where we can live stream from. That being said, after the event, let's all grab a drink and go to the courtyard and enjoy this probably the last nice, warm summer evening, and continue the conversation and the networking in the courtyard together. So now, without further ado, I would like to present to you the first speaker of the evening, Phoebe Blackburn. Phoebe has been a freelance communications and circular economy consultant since 2015. And she's in Berlin since 2016. In her former life, because also she has a past life, she worked for Yahoo Deutschland, Germany, in Munich, the French embassy, EDF, which is the biggest energy group in France, where she spent 8 years working in corporate responsibility and internal communications in London and in Paris. And today she supports organizations using interactive tools to explain and practice the circular economy model, to see it as a way to find new business opportunities and to support regenerative, less wasteful ways of doing business. Phoebe is trilingual, English, French, and German, and oftentimes she mixes them all in one sentence. That's the coolest thing, I think. And she's an editor, writer, and translator, and TEDx coach. In 2012, she traveled around Asia and Russia for 10 months, photographing trash cans for an exhibition, which is called Les Plus Belles, which were shown in a dozen of places in Paris and Berlin. She is the German representative of the global circular economy community called Circulab, with 17 members in 20 countries. And at a local level, she's an active member of Circular Berlin, which develops circularity in Berlin. She was a co-founding and supervisory board member of a German sustainability startup. And Phoebe has been very active, I can totally testify that, within our circle here at Factory Berlin since 2019. In her free time, she sings in a choir. And she likes to read travel literature, to go to art exhibits, and to photograph trash cans. With that being said, please give a big round of applause for Phoebe Blackburn.
Okay, just checking this is working. It sounds like it is. Yep. I can see some audience out there. Fantastic. Thanks for coming. And thanks to Rob for a very detailed introduction, and to Factory for hosting us. Obviously, this wouldn't be possible without you. I think Rob said enough about me, so I think we'll move to the next slide. Aha moments. I hope you can all see this. This was my aha moment 5 years ago, almost to the day. Has anyone been to Australia here? Yay, I think 4, that's pretty good. Well, in Australia there's a bird called the bowerbird. In Aborigine it's the wita. And this bird is really resourceful and really creative. And during the mating season, it builds this really cool thing, sort of a structure, an architectural feature, if you like, to attract female bowerbirds. And it works pretty well. The thing is, in the past, it used to use shells and berries, generally of the color blue. Blue works really well to attract females, apparently. Any men wearing blue today? Yeah. Not sure it works so well for humans. But anyway, this bird suddenly started discovering blue bottle tops and blue straws and thinking, wow, cool, like, this is an extra resource. And voila, yeah, this is Mr. Bowerbird, looking pretty smug in his architectural feature. And yeah, this was my aha moment. I saw these images 5 years ago in Paris at a small presentation by a startup, Circulab, as it was then. And the image is tragic because it's basically using our trash, which is effectively toxic. But it's also super inspiring because it reminds us that in nature there is no waste. Everything has a purpose. Someone's waste is someone else's food or resource. And you sort of think, well, how come nature can do this super well and we can't do this? Why can we build cathedrals? We can even rebuild them after they've partly burnt down. And we can build iPhones and do all these things, but we always seem to have the problem of waste. I mean, waste is, in effect, a design error. This is a quotation from Flore Berlingen. She's the director of Zero Waste France, and this year she came out with a book partly based on recycling and saying, I mean, I'm summarizing here, but one of her messages really is that we should stop focusing on trying to turn our waste into a resource, but look the other way around. We should really try and turn our resources into products that aren't going to be wasted. And there's still a really strong emphasis in circular economy on recycling, which is right at the end of the cycle, really. And Germany, in fact, where we are today, was one of the first countries to legislate on circular economy in the 90s with China. The thing is, the legislation was still very much waste sorting orientated, and we still see this today. This is, 30 years on. We really need to move ahead to much more holistic approach to circularity. I'm part of the Circulab community, so it started, as I said, sort of 5 years ago. I was one of the first to be certified. I didn't know really what circular economy was at the time. I just knew with that aha moment, bird image, I just thought, right, I want to do this. This is it. This is what I want to do. And even though I didn't really remember the presentation back then, I knew that I wanted to work with these people. And they called me up 6 months later, and I translated all their tools into English. And from then on, the community developed. And from 5, we're now about 70 across the globe in all continents. So what is the Circulab community? We're basically all freelancers, apart from perhaps a handful working in small consultancies. There are 2 of us now in Berlin. One just joined me last month, which is quite exciting, working for a big climate organization in Berlin. So we'll be even stronger now. And the rest spread out, obviously, a lot in France, because it's a French organization. And we basically use all sorts of different tools, including gamification tools, to help explain, educate, and implement the model in organizations, not just companies, but obviously a lot of companies, and public bodies, universities, to help people slowly transition to this new model. well, not so new. Since circularity has actually been around, obviously, for thousands of years, it's just not been formalized as such. This is working. This diagram, which I borrowed from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, thank you, Ellen MacArthur Foundation, illustrates really well that I think we need to move not just to a mindset where waste is designed out, if you like, but to a mindset which is much more holistic, where we're actually regenerating systems instead of doing a bit less bad. To me, that's what sustainability is about, if I may say. I still work on sustainability topics, obviously, and circular economy is part of sustainability, but it needs to be more disruptive. We need to look at systems as a whole and how they're all interconnected. And we also need to collaborate a lot more instead of competing so much. I think there's a buzzword we now use called co-petition. I quite like that word, since I love words. But yeah, we need to move towards more co-petition than competition. The take, make, waste model, as many of you will have heard of that. And certainly when we're working with organizations, we will look at where they are today, those making products, and how we can try and get them to move away from using so many more raw materials, which are coming through here on the left, and staying, so if I move to the next diagram, how we can stay more within the circle. So more repair, or more remanufacturing, more reuse, or more repurposing, and with recycling being almost at the end in terms of value capture. So that's what we aim to do with the organizations that we work with. And it involves basically mapping them onto, this is the German version, of a circular model canvas. Today, as many of you who've studied business studies will know, many companies and obviously universities are using a slightly dated business model canvas, which doesn't really include negative externalities or some positive externalities either, in fact. And it certainly doesn't include here the section in German, Werterhaltung, yeah, maintaining value or end of use. What happens to your iPhone, to your t-shirt, to your labello stick after you've finished using it? In most business models, this is simply just not included. Yeah, and clearly for businesses, this has to be about making more business, generating more income. How can we make the elements here, reuse, repurposing? How can we create new business models that are still profitable, but while keeping materials and products in the economy for much longer? It's a challenge because the current economic system is still not really geared towards making that successful. It's shifting, but it's really slow. I think I'm probably edging towards the end of my time. An image from Berlin. I was invited a month ago to the opening of the Nochmal. Great German wordplay here. Nochmal means effectively, well, it's like nochmal, it means once again. And with the strapline, alles außer neu. And that's interesting. It's the idea of we sell everything apart from new things. And this, to me, encapsulates this mindset change, which we need to be following and pushing really hard, much harder than we are already. But I wanted to show you this photograph because it's really positive. It's really inspiring. And as I'm sure some of my colleagues will mention in the talks after me, the circular economy is a huge opportunity for businesses, for investors, for new worthwhile jobs. It's not about being austere or, sort of buying less and being a lot less happy with a lot less quality products. I'm in fact wearing a bracelet I bought at the Nochmal a month ago. Obviously pure diamonds, as you can see. €2, quite a deal. Yeah, I can close-ups if you like. But yeah, I bought this at the Nochmal a month ago and had a really good afternoon. In fact, the bracelet was cheaper than a cappuccino. But just to say, these are stories also we need to be telling. There's so much storytelling to be done. I do quite a lot of writing, and we need to be posting positive stories about what it's like to be within this circle and not perpetually using new resources, mining more minerals than we really actually need. Voila. I think I'm getting towards the end of my talk. Yes, a bit of French. So here are some of the tools that we use: stakeholder maps, value chain maps, circular economy canvases in 7 languages so far. There's a book, Activate the Circular Economy. It's available in PDF format in English. and obviously in French, and I believe in Chinese, although I couldn't check that. My Chinese is a bit limited. But yes, do come and talk to me for those physically present at the end of the session, at the bar or in the courtyard, and online for those obviously who are with us online. Do check us out on circulab.com, and thank you very much for being here. I will pass you back to Rob.
Okay, you guys, thank you so much, Phoebe. I really appreciate it. No, stay up with us. Stay up with us.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. People have a lot of questions. Who thought this was pretty cool? Like co-opetition, collaboration, the circular business model canvas, and nochmal. Nochmal is by BSR, right? It's like BSR. Yeah. I saw in the U-Bahn, I saw the advertisements, and it's like so cool.
It's brilliant. You should go there.
Yeah,
it's in Heinickendorf.
It's also close to where I live, so it's
exactly no excuse.
It sold it to me. Okay, you guys. Who's got a question? We would love to have questions from the audience. Come on.
Be brave.
Be brave. Yes.
Can you elaborate more on the concept of co-opetition? I would love to know more about it.
Thank you for that question. The question was, for those who couldn't perhaps hear that, can you elaborate more on the concept of co-petition? I can't elaborate that much because I didn't coin it. However, I love the word because it really encapsulates what we need to do. And if anyone knows the economist Kate Raworth, who wrote the book about donut economics, she said in over 20, 50 years' time, if we look back and we were successful and we managed to make this transition to a more circular and a more sustainable donut economy, she said it will be because we collaborated, not because we competed. And I'm quoting her here. But to me, it's that we still need both. We need to compete well, but together, instead of keeping information to ourselves. And that's obviously it is the old model of doing business. I mean, I've worked in a big corporate for 8 years. I remember my boss often telling me, no, don't share this with the other team or the other company. And you're like, yeah, but actually, ultimately, it will be helping us to get closer towards our goal. But yeah, I think we should use this term more often because it really encapsulates what we need to be doing. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Come on, one more question. This is your chance. Yes, put your mask on. Thank you. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for the talk. I just wanted to ask, since you have worked with the big boys a lot of time, 80 years is a lot of times, have you ever tried offering or telling them about these creative solutions and, how do they respond of working in a new way, which is a circular way, as compared to the older way? Thanks so much.
Okay, I think I need to summarize that. Your question, so we've worked with some of the big boys, big ladies, is that something we say now? Or big corporates, I guess you mean. And please correct me if I'm wrong, how have you helped to get them to transition or to really start implementing, or even before that, I guess, understanding these creative new models? Is that what? Yeah. Yes, great, thanks. Yeah, actually, I did a workshop last June with a French bank, fairly successful French bank, and I took the challenge. I thought, wow, I'd love to work with a bank on circular economy because banks aren't producing things in the conventional sense. I guess they're producing services. However, obviously services are always linked to products at some point, and products are linked to services. And we spent 3 months thinking with a consultant in France how we could do this workshop with them. It's a 3-hour workshop. And they spent a whole week listening to talks by different experts around France and Europe on circular economy and new models. And it was very, very interesting. We basically came out with lots of ways the bank could offer circular loans, for instance. And I mean, this is really, really interesting because you just don't really think that banks would really be able to do that. But they can. This was, for instance, for DIY. So when you want to renovate your house, the bank could offer you a loan, but they could say, we'll offer you a loan, but we'll give you a more preferential rate if you use these suppliers and who are guaranteeing that you are using sustainable, perhaps circular materials. So that's an example. I did another workshop with a real estate company in Brandenburg, totally different. They were basically selling bits of land in Brandenburg and for people to build houses on. And they were trying to think how they could make that offer more circular. And so we looked at different issues. We also looked at future scenarios, for instance, around water shortage in Brandenburg. As we know, there is a water shortage. People aren't talking about it that much, but it's going to hit really, really hard, probably in the next 5, 10, 20 years. So how could property developers really think about that in terms of the deals that they're offering people when they're selling land and or homes? I hope that answers your question, but please feel free to contact me later if you have any other questions.
Really good question. Thank you for that. We got a question here from our friend Yashar on YouTube. And his question is, can other entrepreneurs become a part of Circulab?
Sure, yeah. We're always looking for facilitators. We have probably 1 or 2 joining every month. We had an American lady join us last month, someone from New Caledonia also recently, which is quite exciting. I had to remember where New Caledonia was exactly. So yeah, sure. We just tend to not work with big consultancies because the whole point is that we have people, if I may say like myself or my other colleague in Berlin, who are more independent and aren't part of a big sort of corporation or a big consultancy. But yeah, obviously all freelancers are welcome to join us.
Thank you so much. So Yashar, you heard this? Yes, go for it. Take a turn. Join Circulab. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause for Phoebe Blackburn. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rob. Okay.
And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our second speaker, who is Asha Singhal. Asha is the executive design lead and the head of the European projects at Biomimicry Frontiers. She is a biomimic, an architect, a researcher, an educator specializing in nature-inspired designs, bridging the gap between the built and the natural environments. Her vision with her work is to create pragmatic narratives of hope inspired by nature, empowering people with tangible actions towards creating a climate-positive future. Asha's core is in meaning-making, conceptualizing, and realizing speculative designs and inspiring in restorative living built environments. She has international experience working on projects in Canada, Germany, China, the US, and India. And one more thing, if it wasn't for Asha, who was the first one who raised the hand to create an event for tonight, we wouldn't be having this event tonight. So therefore, please give a huge round of applause for Asha Singhal.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Rob. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for having me. It's really wonderful to be here. So I wanted to start with introducing biomimicry, introducing some of the concepts that we have, talking about some of the cool organisms that we work with and some of the projects that we are working on, and how all of that basically ties back into circular economy. So to begin with, how many of you are familiar with the term biomimicry? Or how many of you have heard about it? Cool, very good. So there are quite a few people here, which is really nice. And so I'm just going to start with a definition. Biomimicry comes from the Greek words bios, meaning life, and mimicry, meaning to imitate. Simply put, it is innovation inspired by nature. It is the Velcro that you're all probably really familiar with. You use this as a temporary adhesive. It is being used to replace slide tapes, and you use this in your bags and shoes all the time. So the cool story behind this is that the Velcro was inspired by the burrs, which are seeds which are found in the forest. So these burrs, because they're too heavy to be dispersed by the wind, they have this unique ability. So they have these hooks on the sides. What happens is they get caught on your clothes, they get caught on your shoes, and also to your dogs. So for any hiker who's been in the woods, probably some of you here, you can understand how annoying that can be. But just try and imagine how incredible a solution this is for an object that can't move long distances, but really needs to travel that way for propagation. So one of the questions is, like, why are we talking about biomimicry when it is an event about circular economy? So exactly as Phoebe said, it is the model to look at when we talk about circular economy. It is the model to look at when it comes to closed-loop systems. So let's just try and do this exercise. Imagine you're in a forest. There's a really cool breeze, and there are the leaves rustling, there are ants on the ground, and you can hear the stream nearby. Have you ever seen something like this, ever, around it, which is produced by nature? Probably not, because nature doesn't do waste. There is no concept of waste in nature. Whatever is waste from one system becomes resource for another, or whatever is a byproduct of any organism or system becomes a raw material for another organism to use. And how nature does this is through a closed-loop cycle of producers, consumers, and decomposers. Within this closed-loop cycle, the only energy that enters it is from the sun, like the constant energy of the sun. The materials that are used are benign, and they cycle through this closed-loop system. Coming back to the example of the forest, what that looks like is with the energy of the sun, the plants, which are the primary producers, they produce sugars using photosynthesis. And the rabbits, or the primary consumers, they're the ones consuming all of those sugars in terms of fruits, flowers. They might end up being consumed by the secondary consumers, which are the foxes. But both of these systems, or both of these organisms, will be producing waste. What happens to that waste? It is the fungi and the bacteria, which are the decomposers, that actually end up breaking it down into the soil, which further becomes nutrition for the trees again, closing the loop. So when it comes to human design systems, what is it that is missing? What is the missing piece? One of the cool things that happened recently is Biomimicry Institute published a report, which is called The Nature of Fashion. And within that, they have outlined what are the missing pieces within that industry. One thing that seems to be missing is like highly efficient consumption systems. So we have a tendency to use things, but immediately put them in the trash after we're done using them. But we don't tend to reuse or really think about those secondary consumers or put them back into the cycle. So that's one thing which seems to be slightly missing, but the major piece which seems to be missing is the decomposers phase. So how do we start to bridge that gap within our designs? And the one thing they suggested is that what we need is a circular economic infrastructure where all available usefulness is extracted from a material before it is ultimately safely decomposed. Now, safely is a key word because this is important. It has to be safe both for the environment and for humans. So how can nature really start helping us in this? So there are millions of species out there, somewhere between 7 and 30 million species, who over 3.8 billion years of research and development have come up with time-tested solutions which are diverse, adaptive, and resilient blueprints for sustainability. They really start to solve these challenges. So challenges like what? Something like color. And how can we start manufacturing color in ways where it doesn't use harmful chemicals, where it doesn't use these pigments and dyes, which also add to our material runoff? Perhaps we could look at something structural, like this morpho butterfly uses. Or packaging. How does sustainable packaging work? Something that goes right back into the earth. Or something like reversible adhesives. We've talked about Velcro, but we can also start looking at geckos and how they stick using van der Waals forces, which can be removed quite easily, but it's really, really strong. And what can dung beetles teach us about waste as a raw material? And what can fungi and mushroom teach us about cooperative relationships? And I think it was great that Phoebe mentioned the cooperative relationships and the competitive relationships, because there's such a huge host of relationships in nature. And if we can really start to identify which ones are meaningful to a specific challenge, we can really truly begin to start solving those. Just with this abundance of knowledge out there, like so many species and all of them doing multifunctional adaptations, so that really changed something in me. For me, that was really a change in my mindset, a change in my paradigm as to how I started looking at nature. Earlier, it was just for fun, you could enjoy it, you could learn a lot from it. But suddenly, I realized I could look at nature as a model, as a measure, as a mentor for my design challenges. How could I learn from it, ask it those questions? But as much as I would like to say that this is something that began for me when I was an architect, when I started studying biomimicry, it is something that started much earlier. I would say when you're kids, and this is something that you all might be familiar with. When we're kids, we have this innate curiosity when we want to get to know, okay, so what's underneath that leaf litter? Where are those mushrooms going? Why is the leaf like that? We ask these curious questions. We have this passion. And somehow at some point we stop asking those questions at the risk of sounding dumb. But the thing is, just understanding that there are so many species out there, we also get this humbleness. We understand the humility that there is no way we can know all of it. And so we can really start asking those questions again and again. And I'm very lucky that I get to carry that into my profession with my work at Biomimicry Frontiers, which is a sustainability consultancy. And together, we believe in a world that is in harmony with nature. What that means is we pick up projects. Any project that we work on, anything that we work on, focuses on this vision. It has to bring it to life. And we are a team of interdisciplinary experts. So we have biologists on the team, business people, we have architects, engineers, designers, circular economy experts, life cycle analysis experts. And this helps us really have a holistic discussion about the challenges that we are facing. So we work on a host of projects, residential, product integration, systems, urban design. We have excursions and workshops because it's hard to keep us away from nature. And within the residential projects, I would love to discuss about this one that we have in India right now. It's a project in Bengaluru. The biggest challenge that we were facing there was that of passive cooling or thermoregulation. So how do we keep that building cool without using any fossil fuels, without using air conditioning? So we started asking, so how would nature cool? And we came up with this long list of organisms, because there are so many of them. We do it every day with our skin. Our hair stands up, or we start sweating whenever we need to thermoregulate. So we started looking at the elephant skin. So all these things that look like wrinkles, they're actually cracks within the skin. What happens is it absorbs water, and elephants love taking a mud bath. They just go into this water, and the skin absorbs it. And through evapotranspiration, slow evapotranspiration, it releases that, cooling down the organism. So this is just one strategy. We also looked at chameleons, how they use color-changing behavior to thermoregulate, or how barrel cactus uses ribbing within their structures to do the same, and to have these passive cooling methods. The interesting thing was to be able to emulate it into our designs. And Lucas and I, we were having a discussion yesterday, which was about materials. But the good thing about biomimicry is we can be innovative about how we apply this. So this might mean really just using very simple methods. And indigenous knowledge is one thing that really feeds into our process for this reason, because people have learned how to live in harmony with nature. Another project that we're working on is a circular food economy system, which is in Guelph, Canada. It's the first of its kind in Canada. And we are trying to work with a patch model where the neighborhoods function like a forest, and there is equal resource exchange and sharing. Another one that we're working on in China is an eco-resort where we are looking at hydrological flows, biodiversity corridors, waste management, but we are really trying to embed all of these in the conception of the design. So yeah, these are some of the projects, I would say, that we've worked on. And we use a whole host of frameworks as well. Circular economy feeds into it. So a lot of times, systems thinking is what comes in first, because that's what can really start helping us identify those gaps and those leverage points where we can start employing all these other frameworks. Circular economy, biomimicry thinking, cradle to cradle, they come in when we have to think about those innovative ideas and those resource flows within the design and how we can start utilizing them. The SDGs and the life principles, which you can see up at the top, this here. This is like a list of 26 universal principles which are followed by almost all life on Earth. And part of it is also cultivate cooperative relationships. So both of these, they start helping us in measuring, in goal setting and measuring. So goal setting happens at the beginning of the project, and measuring happens somewhere in the middle or at the end, but then we come back to it. It's always a cycle. So in all of this, like, it really helps us provide like a holistic framework to work with these intense design ideas and these projects that we have on our plate sometimes. But in all of this, before we wrap up, I would really like to provide you just a glimmer of hope before we move forward, because I feel all of us who are working within the climate sciences realize that there is always despair looming right around the corner somewhere. There's news, there's something bad that's happening, and I think this year has been quite a tough one for all of us. But what I wanted to share here is the fact that within biomimicry, we realize that there is hope at every corner. We have all these elders with 3.8 billion years of experience who can share us and who can show us the path towards a more positive future. So that resulted in me working on this project called Hybrid Futures with a colleague of mine, where we envision cities of the future, what they would look like. We work with indigenous knowledge, bringing it together with emergent technologies, so bringing the past and the future together, weaving it together to create a world that is really, truly in harmony with nature, where we can think about technology as something that benefits us rather than adds more waste. And yeah, let's just start with hope. Let's just imagine the future and try to identify those gaps, which we can start fulfilling. If there's something missing, let's start walking towards it. Next time you have a question, you find yourself in a design challenge, maybe try asking, how would nature do this? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asha. That was amazing. Thank you. Really, really great. And yeah, we definitely should look at nature and life with more curiosity, childlike, with this curiosity. And thank you for sharing your hopeful spirits. Guys, who thought that was pretty impressive? Yeah, I want to see these hands go up.
Good to see
Okay, I mean, there must have been a million questions in this crowd here, right? Okay, your turn to ask them, to Asha. Come on. Put.
You saw in the nature and you basically mimicked that in your business and throughout your journey. What was the favorite thing?
It's really hard to find one favorite. Like, it's almost impossible, I would say. Like, so biomimicry, we work at like 3 different levels. There's the form, there's the process, there's the system. And I feel in all of it, there are so many cool things to look at. Well, I would say I love looking at octopods in general because they're one of my favorite organisms, but so are tardigrades, which have been able to not die, manage to not die, and survive through all of the mass extinctions. If I have to think about one cool thing, I feel that's really hard. I feel the elephant skin really goes right up there because we were able to find a solution which was quite hard, because in the beginning, once we think about these pockets within a skin that can absorb water or keep water in, we start going into the material domain. Like, how can we start thinking about creating new materials? But that takes 5 years, and we don't have that always. So we started looking at more porous materials, how we can start thinking about pebbles as porous materials and perhaps stacking them over in a facade so it can still retain that water, and then by evapotranspiration it can cool out the microclimate around the house. So that was, I would say that was quite a cool finding. Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Let's have a question from the back of the room. Guys, anyone? No one? You guys still with us, or are you sleeping already? Okay.
Phoebe.
Oh, yeah, please.
I just wondered, Asha, when you're approaching, say, a company, or one of the big boys or one of the big
Yeah.
companies, how on earth would you talk about biomimicry to them? Because for a big company, you really imagine that they're going to be like, it's not very convincible.
That's a very, very, very good question, and something we're discovering within our business quite a lot. Like, the more we try to approach clients, the more we realize like how to actually be able to talk to them. So we have a very value-driven methodology within our business. So we also try to find those clients who are value-driven, who want to move towards regeneration and sustainability. But the other part is also the cost-benefit analysis sometimes. So within ourselves, we are trying to develop a cost-benefit analysis of ecosystem services, for example, to try and understand, so for those with a more capitalist mindset, so how can we try convincing them as well? Because they need to start moving towards regeneration as well. And part of it is also talking to them about the fact that this is happening, whether they want it or not. This is going to happen. And eventually they're going to have to shift. And I think some of those bigger companies, they do realize this. And it might be a little bit difficult to get on board biomimicry specifically because there is no prototype, there is no answer, there is no straightforward answer. But there can be. So there are lots of technologies which are being developed across the globe based on biomimicry. So we can start cataloging those and also using those products and services within our designs. And for the more innovative-minded people, we can really bring in the whole process, which is a huge, long process, but we can really start exploring that, I would say. So it's a very good question, and I think this is still part of our discovery process, which is also why we use so many different frameworks, because it really starts providing a more holistic understanding of each project, of the clients as well. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Thank you. Great, thanks.
Thank you, Phoebe. Maybe out to our friends on YouTube. You want to ask your questions? I typed it in the chat a couple times. Prompting. Anyone? Or in the audience? No? Then we do it 3, 2, 1. Oh, there's a question right here. There we go. We have to put the pressure on. Manon, please go ahead.
So I was particularly wondering about one point in one of your slides where you had a few examples of the projects that you do and like how you work with businesses. And one that immediately spoke to me is the last one that you had in the far right corner where you had, I think, business strategies while rappelling or whatever. And it speaks to me because this is sort of also an idea that I have to, if you bring people into nature and give them experiences, like maybe a little more extreme experiences, like hiking a high mountain or going surfing or whatever, that gives them, it brings them more in touch with themselves and with ultimately with nature. So I was just wondering what exactly you do with them and how you stage these excursions.
That's a really cool question, and I'm very excited to dive into it because that's also one of my favorite parts. I also teach, so whenever it comes to teaching, I take my students usually out into the forest. That's where we learn, and everyone has some kind of a lens with them. They go on scavenger hunts, and I go with them, and it's a lot of fun. So, but when it comes to workshops and excursions, we organize like a few days long, so usually like also a week long, in different places in nature. And we have these extreme sports like rappelling and rock climbing as well. But we also have a lot of downtime where we can sit and reflect and try to reconnect, where it's really about reconnecting with your land, with the organisms in there, with the systems that exist in there. So we also have indigenous people who come over and connect, bridge that gap as well. So yeah, that's really one of my favorite parts about excursions and workshops. And you can have that anywhere. That's the best part about it. You can have it anywhere. You can have it in Berlin. You can have it in a park. Really, just go to Volkspark Friedrichshain. Between all those bottles, you can still find a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you more about
Yeah,
that.
I would be more than happy to talk more about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When you say indigenous people, like, what do you mean exactly?
So it depends where we are.
Yeah.
And depending on that, we talk with the native people and who would be able to bring in their traditions, their practices and rituals and be able to share this and that knowledge that they have of that land. And I think this is also part of the way we work with projects. Because some of those projects, like we have a project going on in Nevada right now, which is about a regreening project. It is to reverse desertification and lead to more regenerative designs. And we're talking with the Paiutes there to try to understand what are the rituals around death, because a part of our project is surrounding or talking about death. So how can we learn from them and be able to be mindful and respectful of their traditions within our built designs as well?
And then those are strategy workshops or business workshops? Or?
Also, yes. I mean, we really blur the boundaries between disciplines because I feel we're past the point where we have to have them in silos.
Okay, super interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
Love to talk more about
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Great
Thank you.
questions. Thank you guys
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you,
Asha.
everyone.
That was amazing. Indigenous wisdom, childlike curiosity, and let's all get out this weekend and get inspired and reconnect with nature and learn a bunch. Okay, we go outside. Exactly, that's what Asha said. Go outside. Yes. Later on, we'll also go outside together. Now, our next speaker is Lukas Stumpf. He considers himself a systemic agent, floating between science, policy, and business. Currently, he's got 3 gigs going on. He's a PhD researcher in circular economy and systemic embeddedness at University of Graz in Austria. He's a consultant at InfraRes, currently working on projects for CO2 monitoring schemes for a public real estate company and development of a waste management concept in 11 municipalities in Bosnia. He does pro bono consultant, for instance, in the textile sector, and is also an expert in a social accelerator program. He's trying to connect the dots between the disciplines, cross-disciplinary, and wants to do science-based consultancy and contribute to bridging the gap between science and the real world. He loves traveling and all things spontaneous, and since he moved or lives in Berlin, he has also become a foodie. Please give a big round of applause for Lukas.
Thank you. Thank you, nice to be here. It was nice because the last introduction also included the bridging the gap sentence, so yeah, here we are. So today I'm here as a PhD student, so as a researcher, and I will try to come up with some circular economy insights from the sustainability perspective in research. So this is me, at least on the, on the card. I'm a PhD researcher at the University of Graz, part of the Institute for System Sciences, Innovation and Sustainability Research within a project which is called Christian Doppler Laboratory for Sustainable Product Management, Enabling a Circular Economy. What we're basically doing there is that we're trying to track or trying to look at product life cycles and how to manage data and information flows across all the product life cycles. So from the production stage or sourcing phase, production stage, use phase, and the end of life or second use phases. And then we're trying to look at, okay, if we have the data and the information flows, what actually do we need to do in order to make the right decisions? So look into the decision-making processes. And yeah, I'm very much based on the theory, so I'm really looking at the theoretical foundations. And all of this started for me with a book by Jeffrey D. Sachs, which I read like 5 years ago. It's called The Age of Sustainable Development, and Jeffrey D. Sachs is basically one of those huge United Nations guys who was involved in the Millennium Development Goals and who was also part on developing the Sustainable Development Goals. And this is basically the first time that I really saw, okay, this is such a comprehensive system and such a comprehensive set of goals that we actually need to fulfill. I want to know more about it, and I started to study a master program in sustainable development. And during that master program, I read another book, which is called Upcycle, which is from the founders of the Cradle to Cradle School of Thought, you can say maybe. And this book basically taught me on how to think in systems and how to actually have a biosphere and a technosphere, and how organic materials are fed back into the biosphere and how technical materials are fed back into the technosphere for multiple circles. And then I wrote my master thesis on circular economy, and then I started my PhD. And since I'm at the Institute of System Sciences, I started to read books on system science. And this is Donella Meadows in her book on Thinking in Systems, which really taught me to have a look at how are actually the dots connected between the systems and what are the actors actually doing. So yeah, if you look up circular economy, you might easily find quotes like this. So there is a researcher, and she's saying, circular economy should be seen as a transition to a new and different business model where well-being is decoupled by resource consumption. And then we have a businesswoman up there, and she's saying, in Europe alone, adopting circular economy principles could generate net economic benefits of 1.8 trillion euros, which is enormous. And then we have the European Commission, which is also quite fond of the circular economy concept, and they're saying that scaling up the circular economy from frontrunners to the mainstream players will make decisive contribution to achieving climate neutrality by 2050 and decoupling economic growth from resource use, while ensuring the long-term competitiveness of the EU and leaving no one behind. And there we can actually already see that there is a lot of sustainability principles in there. So we have the climate neutrality, we don't only have the resource consumption and circularity, we have the climate neutrality, and we have leaving no one behind, which is a strong connection to the SDGs, for example. And then, when you start to dig more into circular economy scientific literature, you really quickly end up with also drawbacks and pitfalls. So, for example, if you have a circular economy, or if you try to pursue circular economy principles, you might end up in a problem where you might shift burdens. This is here the burden shifting. Here's the laser also. So, which basically means if you have a material, for example plastic, which is designed for a linear economy, and you're trying to replace that material with a bioplastic, for example, you might end up with burden shifting and environmental pressures, because bioplastic might be fed or might be very, very resource intensive if it's made from cornstarch, for example, and it might even compete with food crops. But it is a circular material because it's compostable, and then you end up with a burden shifting of environmental pressures. Or you can end up with rebound effects. For example, if we have secondary products which are actually fed back into the market, the assumption that many people do is actually that those products replace primary products. So that there's a one-to-one replacement, which is in fact mostly not true, because what you're actually doing is that you're adding up a secondary market. The market for the first products or for the primary materials would still exist, and you're adding up a secondary market. So we might have a rebound effect, which is actually worse for the environment actually than if you would not have this market at all. And yeah, then there's some other points. So for example, perverse incentives, which is part of a systemic trap, which might be tax benefits for raw oil in plastic production, or we have path dependencies, which we talked about before as well. And we might have risks and uncertainties, and that's a very nice questions that I would have for you, Phoebe, afterwards as well, because you in the Circular Business Model Canvas, you have the maintaining value section. And what I experience, or what literature basically can say, is also that if you do not sell a product anymore, but you're basically leasing it, for example, in a sharing economy, then you can end up with a very high business risk, because you're not selling the product and then your calculation is done. But actually what you need to do is you need to take into account the consumer and how to maintain the value that you're actually having in order for the business model to become profitable. So yeah, this is some pitfalls that you might end up with when entering the circular economy. And there's some other quotes from other researchers, and they maybe say that it can be very difficult to actually assess the overall global net sustainability contribution by circular economy activities, and that the CE concept has selectively developed, neglecting radical human-centric transformational aspects, and instead adheres a familiar pathway to economic or business-led economic growth. And I would say that it really depends on all of us to not let this happen, but to rather make circular economy a very inclusive concept. And yeah, we had a lot of frameworks and concepts before. I just want to end up with saying that I think that circular economy needs to be embedded in a sustainability frame, because otherwise we might end up with research rebounds and burden shifting. Yeah, those are, for example, the SDGs that we've been talking about before, and which is the very center of the Global Goals Jam as well. We've been talking about Kate Raworth before, so we have the donut economic model here as well. And we've been talking about the future before, and there is a strategic management framework where we can actually look into the future based on sustainability principles. And I would like to say, okay, that this is actually important to embed circular economy in there, because otherwise we can also end up with adverse systemic effects. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lucas. Thank you for this academic, theoretic systems approach. I think it's very important. I like it makes my head spin. You know, it's like, oh, where are we? Your opportunity, guys. You know the game. Get your mask on. There's the microphone. Yes, 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 yes. I saw one. Getting the mask out. No, not. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Okay. Who goes up and asks a question will get an extra drink.
Oh, wow, I have a question.
Okay, I'll just... Oh, yeah, please, please.
Okay, can you hear me? So thanks for your talk. And I would be interesting if on the last slide it says that circular economy needs to be embedded in a wider system. And I would be interesting if you already, or your team already had some thoughts into that direction.
Yeah, so what we're basically doing is that right now I'm having a research project on supply chain structures. In my case, it's the packaging supply chain. And this is basically very much like every supply chain is basically a huge and enormous system. And there we're talking to people from every angle of the supply chain and trying to look at, okay, if you wanted to transition to a circular economy, who actually carries the burden and who will be benefiting and who will be worse off. And then also who is setting the framework, which in plastic is basically the regulatory space, so it's the governments. And what we're doing there is that we're trying to look at, okay, where are actually the leverage points that we could actually take in order to transform this plastic packaging system into a hopefully more sustainable and more circular one. And it's really, but it's based on really social sciences and really looking at, okay, what do different actors along the supply chain say? I don't have any results yet, but I'm working on them.
Great, great question. There's another question right here. Great, thank you. Coming on.
Hello, Lucas.
Hey.
So this year we've all had a crash course in systems thinking because we've all got used to seeing two different types of systems maps in the Corona news. But still, systems thinking, I think it's a kind of a key skill which sits next to critical thinking. It's very low, so I'm having to kind of squat in order to give the question.
It looks quite sporty though.
Yeah, thank you. How do you see systemic thinking and systems narratives becoming democratized, becoming more kind of usable and being used maybe in schools and things like that in the future?
How? Well, first of all, I think a good thing is that systems thinking is becoming more qualitative. Because the systems thinkers at our institute, they're basically modelers. So I don't have any idea about what they're doing. So I get, of course, their assumptions and what the result is, but systems thinking can be very, very quantitative. And I think it's already a good thing that it starts to become more qualitative and that you can start to draw systemic maps or system maps and how systems actually work in a very qualitative way. Otherwise, how? Well, I'm part of a university, but I'm actually not doing any teaching, so no student actually knows me. I'm just the guy who's sitting in the office doing research. So I couldn't really tell, but I would say that I know that there's a lot of people. I know my girlfriend, for example, she's doing systems mapping as well in her studies. So it enters educational sphere. That's what I know. How to improve this? Well, we could brainstorm, I guess.
It's a great question. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the answer. I think it's really important to integrate this early on in the thinking and educational process. Any other questions? Also, our friends from... Oh, we got a question right here. Go for it.
Yes. So thank you very much. And when you looked into the research, I wondered what has changed over the course of the years, because I think this term is not very new, circular economy. I'm not sure what it was the first definition, probably you know. But what has changed in terms of the definitions there and the focus of the research?
Oh, you're opening quite a bottle here. So, yeah, I mean, what we know circular economy, or like the concept or similar concepts of circular economy have been existing for a long time. If it's the performance economy or the blue economy or biomimicry, or it has been existing since the 70s. Well, even before. circular economy has been, like the term circular economy as we use it today, has actually become mainstream in China in 2000, like in the early 2000s, because they always have their 5 or 6 year plans, policy-wise, and they had a first circular economy plan in the early 2000s, and that's actually where the whole circular economy research boom started. So it was in China, and their focus was very much on, we call it meso-level circular economy, so it's really on eco-industrial parks. And basically you have a production process, and then you have a waste flow or a byproduct flow, and what other company can actually use this waste or byproduct flow in order to produce other products. So this is very much the concept how it started off in China. It's based in the industrial ecology theories. And then it came over to Europe in 2014, 2013 with the first circular economy action plan. And there it became way more product-centric. So it's really on the micro-product level. How can we increase product circularity and increase really circular business models? And this is what I would say where we are right now. So we have a really a problem because in Germany, for example, we have a Kreislaufwirtschaftsgesetz, which is a circular economy law, but the circular economy law is basically a waste law. So it's really only dealing with waste. And so there's a definitional problem still there. And yeah, I would say that on the EU level, we're a little bit further there compared to the German level right now. And I would say that it's very much a product-centric concept at the moment, and then how to look, okay, how can businesses sell those products in a more circular way and develop circular business models? But I would say that there is no clear definition yet. I mean, there's papers out there who analyze like 150 definitions of circular economy or whatever, so yeah. And they are very much based also on environmental issues, so that's what I wanted to say here before as well. So it's really on how can we decouple economic growth with resource consumption, which is maybe not enough. So yeah, there is no social dimension, there is no intergenerational equity normally inside, so this is really something we need to work on, and yeah.
Really good question. Thank you, Sebastian. And, you know, it's been around for a while, the topic. The term was coined in the early 2000s in China. I learned a lot today, you know, it's like, and we're not done yet, you know, we're just beginning. There's a question actually from Dylan right here. He asks on YouTube, do you know if someone is doing a similar research or systemic research about electronic waste?
I might consult my literature database.
Okay.
I would say yes. Yeah. How to do that?
How could Dylan get in touch with you?
Can Dylan?
Yeah.
No, there is no contact information on the slides. I'm a researcher. I don't want people to contact me. No, that's not true.
Okay. So in general, it's a yes, and there's a wealth of literature out there.
It's a yes. How can I communicate to the public right now? I don't know. Has anyone any idea? Yeah? Huh?
Through me?
If this person is from factory?
Dylan, I'll give you my email, and then we'll make a connection here.
I can also write my email as an answer.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can do that later on. Okay, Dylan, I hope that answers it. So there's hope you'll get the literature list, the book list from Lucas. So thank you very much. And give him a big round of applause. Thank you very much, Lucas, for this. We get to the next speaker now, which is Sebastian Daus. Sebastian takes another angle. He's an entrepreneur with a tech and design-driven mind. He combines experience in venture development and digital strategy from companies such as Rocket Internet, Uber, Capgemini, Invent, and others with international studies in innovation and entrepreneurship at ESCP, business school with previous studies in technology management and industrial engineering. Sebastian believes in tech and education to change the world, and he's on a mission to accelerate circularity with Fix First, a startup he co-founded in Berlin that helps people keeping products in use while digitizing the industry of repair and maintenance services. Please give it up for Sebastian Daus.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Rob. Thank you for having me. It's really nice to be in an in-person event over here. Hi to everybody there on YouTube as well, and looking forward to your questions. You can start thinking about them as well already. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to talk a bit about our view, what we're going to do or are doing in terms of circular economy. You got a little bit about Fix First as well, and maybe some inspiration in the end as well. So yeah, hi everybody again. So my name is Sebastian. I'm one of the founders at Fix First. I've been in Berlin, I think, for a couple of years now. I can call the factory my home since then, I would say. Getting to know both of the campuses here as well and the community, which is really cool if you haven't been yet or experienced that yet. And when after working in a couple of different stations and industries as well, when I started looking to my own ideas, I was actually looking to the fashion industry in the beginning as well. And eventually at looking to different ideas and industries, Fix First evolved. And for me, I really wanted to find something and build something where I can have an impact, but it also can really scale and where I can enable an ecosystem that's already there to help get it to the next level, basically. And for us, what we want to do with Fix First is our vision is creating a world where fixing comes first, which for us is really a mindset. It's about if you have an issue, this is what you should go after, how you think about approaching a challenge that you have, if there's an issue with your product. And the mission is why we do this, is really to accelerate the transition towards a more circular future, which we really need to do. You heard the Earth orbit shoot day already. And this is 1970s. I think a bit after my father was born, probably a couple of years more. And back in Germany, there everything seems more or less okay, right? So it's kind of a balance on what we take from Earth and what we use. Fast forward, this is the US. Now we use 5 times the Earth. I think in Germany it's about 3.5 or something. It changes a bit. COVID decelerated that a little bit. But still, we know we can't go on like this. And if you look into electronic waste in particular, I think we have about 50 million tons today. Bad news is it's going to double by 2050. So the question is, what can we do about this? You all learned or know already about circular economy today. And if you look into the concepts there, it looks really, really promising on the things that we can do. And it's not only for the products and for the materials and the resources, it's also about the carbon emissions. This was also by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So if you're new to the topic, this is also a good starting point there if you're interested. And there they said, okay, that it can also contribute to the climate goals that we have to really reduce the carbon emissions there as well. But also on the business side, as you heard before, alone in Europe, it's a 1.8 trillion euro opportunity. This is a study by McKinsey found. So if you look into this diagram, and you've seen this before, designing out waste is obviously the obvious goal to say, okay, well, how can we solve the problem at the root? But the other one is really, okay, how can we keep our products and the materials in use as well? Which is what we're obviously focusing on with Fix First. And what's interesting is when we look into the market is that actually most of the consumers, if they have an issue, they look for a repair as well. Still, but how can we have those issues? How can we can electronic waste double? So for me, that something didn't really add up there. And when we looked into the market, we looked especially at large home appliances, so all the large and heavy ones that you can't easily carry or hide in your somewhere in your room. And we realized that actually the service is one of the major barriers for circularity. Just keep in mind that if you want to buy a new product, Amazon, it's just the next day it's going to be there. And if you have to wait for like 2 weeks to just get an inspection for a large appliance, that's just going to be way too long, right? Imagine you're having a family, you have kids, you're in quarantine, the dishwasher's broke. That can be a risk to the family piece. That's a quote I had from a family man. And so there's a couple of issues there that we basically discovered. So for one, as I mentioned, the barrier is often super high, right? So the cost is too high. It takes forever to find somebody. And the other part is, how can you get neutral advice? If you get service from a retailer, is he going to be unbiased? Is he going to sell you something in the end? It's a bit of a tricky situation there. And what has changed in the market is that this problem has been more and more obvious. So here on the, I'm trying to find the laser as well. This is interesting. It was for Fridays for Future, I think the last time it was offline in Berlin and also in Europe, where people are demonstrating for right to repair, so being able to repair their products by themselves. And if you look into the service experience that's out there, it's really this theme of planned obsolescence. The service ratings are horrible for the manufacturers, and the regulation is now really kicking in next year. So the access to spare parts information is being deregulated. And what we did with Fixword is to say, okay, how can we translate this and the challenges there into a very modern experience and really help consumers there? So one thing is we look into an automated error analysis. So if you have an issue, we want to help you immediately and consider things like spare part availability, sustainability checks, and you really know what it's going to cost, so really to decide what is the next best option for you as a consumer. And of course, we all do this seamless, right? So any experience you're used to from services like Airbnb or Uber, having anything on demand, this is the experience you're going to get. And we only work with qualified experts and look into video services as well. So really lowering the barrier for the service there as well. But when we looked into the market, and this is kind of a slide, so I'm sorry for that. But we realized quickly, okay, if we really want to transform the service, it's not enough just to build a nice front-end experience for consumers. We really have to enable those who are in the market to excel at those kind of service levels. So what we do now is we basically provide our solutions as a white label for repair companies and also manufacturers and retailers to provide them with an immediate response upfront for the consumers, and also help them really streamline their processes, anything from pre-qualifying customer requests, order management, to really have all the data in the flow as well, to do an error analysis as well. And by doing that, we can really combine also the sustainability and our pillars of impact and sustainability as well, which is not only on the customer side, if you think about the cost savings or supporting small and local businesses, but also on the social side. For instance, imagine older technicians who want to carry a washing machine up to the 4th floor. They're not going to do that. And this is one of the challenges why it's really hard to find people in the industry. And with remote services, we can help them as well. And the other part is really environmental aspects there as well, which is the obvious part. And there was our approach. So it's more on the software and B2B side, really lowering the service barriers and helping consumers to get the service they need to keeping their products in use. And for us, it's really about combining the business side, really also with the impact side. And one example, is probably Patagonia as well, who do this well. Here they offer, I think they offer lifetime repairs for all their products. And this is something they did, I think in skiing regions as well. So if you're a business or if you're consulting a business, and it's really worth looking into what they are doing and how they position themselves in the market. And finally, if you have an issue, I can tell you, try to look into it, what you can do yourself. Be a bit patient with the service guys. And just try to keep your products in use. So that's already from our side. Thank you very much and happy to take any of your questions.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. What an inspiring business concept. Questions, guys? Stage is yours. Please.
I just have a comment.
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you for this really cool talk and really inspiring. I love the idea, and I'm glad you mentioned Patagonia because they're also my favorite company when it comes to this circular economy thing, and I mention them all the time. And I just wanted to say for everyone here that Patagonia actually doesn't just repair Patagonia's products, it also repairs other products. So I don't know if they do it currently, but I know before COVID they did once a month, I think you could bring one garment there and they would fix it for you, which I think is pretty awesome. Like you can bring, anything really. You can even bring Nike stuff and they'll fix it. Yeah, just wanted to say that.
Yeah, thanks for the comment. There's also, if you need support, there's a lot of content for doing things on your own. I think one page is iFixit. And there are also a lot of local repair cafes. So those are people who are doing this voluntarily. I think once a week or once a month, it depends a bit on the location there. You can basically bring your electronics there and they try to fix it together with you, which is really cool.
Great comment, great question. Okay, any else? Yes, please.
Yeah, hello. Great presentation. I have a question for the marketing. And we know for users, they have benefits like functional, maybe emotional and social. So for Fix First, do you have like a marketing segment to tell people to fixing is good? Like, because sometimes for social purposes in the world, like using old machines are not good enough, or maybe they don't have the emotional like attachments with the old stuff. So do you have any kind of incentive to have different marketing approach? Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. A very interesting question. So I think it depends pretty much on the product as well. So when we segmented the market, we obviously considered the regulation as well from the European Commission. That's starting next year. The focus is also on household appliances especially. And but if you think about products and repairs and the consumer mind there are a lot of like smartphones or laptops. There still you have the innovation cycle that's relatively high, and the mindset for consumer is more like, okay, I have my mobile phone contract maybe for 2 years, then I'm going to get a new smartphone, or maybe one that's maybe 3 years older or something like this. So they're more driven looking towards newer products. What's interesting with large home appliances, although it doesn't sound very sexy, but is that it's very, for a lot of people, they are very, how to say, systemic about this, or like very rational. So they look into, okay, how long is this gonna, how durable is this gonna be? How efficient is this gonna be? And for a lot of people, it's also a huge investment. So if you want to buy all the appliances, I think depends on the brand, but it's a couple of €1,000. So there they really look into the long-lasting approach as well. So considering the products and the customer segment, I think it's good to target that, and I think that's not so much an issue for that. And the other part in terms of marketing is to also have to see it as a status a little bit, right? So I think probably back in a couple of years, if you said, hey, I use this new digital service, then you would be seen as very superior to somebody else. I think now this is coming with being more environmentally friendly and more sustainable, which we will consider there as well.
Really good question. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I've asked it already in the chat from the YouTube friends. Anyone want to ask a question here? Please type it now. It's your chance to ask an entrepreneur in the circular economy field. Do you do, by the way, do you do fridges too? Mine makes a funny noise. No, especially in the heat. You do?
You can send a request, yeah.
Okay, cool. Like, I have a bad experience. The last time my fridge broke down, I was out for 4 weeks. It wasn't a nice sight, nor was it a nice smell when I entered my apartment back then, and I had to toss that thing out. Okay. I guess, anyone here? Last call. Yeah, we got a question right here. Can you put your mask on and then walk up to the microphone and ask a question in the microphone?
Should I keep it on or?
Yes, please.
Okay, cool. So what Robert brought up in terms of hypothetically getting his fridge repaired brought up something, and I apologize in case you had covered it during your talk, but wouldn't this go against most business models in terms of product life cycle of encouraging repeated consumerism of buying a product to such that it wouldn't its life cycle would be of such a limited amount that consumers will be prompted to buy something again, and therefore wouldn't that be inherently contradictory to most the business models of conventional business, of conventional corporations, that is?
Thanks. Yeah, it's a very good question as well. I think for again, it really depends on also the product category, and it really depends sometimes on the brand that we're working with. So how to put this? I think a lot of, if you look into white goods, like any large appliance like washing machines, dishwashers or something, and if you think about the innovation that happened in the last 5, 10, maybe 20 years, there's probably a blank spot that you have in your hand because there's not so much, at least in my personal opinion. So what you see in the market, there's a lot of competition, and companies really see to how can I reinvent my business model, how can I think about this. And what has been very strategic for a lot of brands is the key to the final customer, this customer relationship, getting to know the customers. A lot of brands, they sell a product as a manufacturer, they have no idea who their customer is. And so for them, it's really strategic to think about, okay, how can I differentiate? How can I increase my customer lifetime value and go beyond just selling the product? And which is why those brands who think about it this way are very curious in looking into that, actually.
Really good question. Okay, guys, give it a big round of applause for Sebastian. Amazing presentation, amazing talk. And with that being said, we come to the next speaker, who is Damla Gürür. Damla is an innovator, a doer, and she's completely obsessed by sustainability. She's the co-founder of Grounded4, a marketplace for sustainable art and events, and Wear PF, which is a sustainable fashion brand. She's an MSc student, a master's student in entrepreneurship and sustainable innovation at ESCP Europe. She holds a bachelor in industrial engineering, and she's got working experience at PwC as an R&D consultant. She's done internships at Coca-Cola, at Toyota, and at Cargill. She's playing the piano. She's composing music, a woman of many talents. She's writing poems, and currently she's learning how to rock the DJ set. Her life purpose is serving humanity and disrupting the current habits to find better ones. She's always open to trying new things and travel as much as possible. Please give a big round of applause for Damla Gürür.
Well, thank you so much, Rob, and everyone for being here. Actually, I'm today so hopeful about seeing everyone working for the same goal, but just by different means. This is actually gave me some inspirations, and also being hopeful towards the future. So today I'm gonna tell you my journey, and it's actually not too far, and it started with this flower that you see right now here. Actually, it's not a flower anymore because it's dead. And maybe you guys are asking how one flower changed that person's life, but this flower changed my life. I used to be a party animal, and I was quite partying a lot. One day, I came out of the club, and I saw a pile of trash. And in that pile of trash, there was one flower trying to survive. And I was just like, okay, there's something wrong about it. And then every week, I went to that club, and I observed that flower, and I just realized that each week, it was fading away. And in the end, that flower was dead. And then within just 3 weeks, the flower was just dead. And then I understood that there's something wrong about it. And I felt the urge of doing something for that. I forgot. Okay. So what do you see in this picture?
Filth.
Yeah. Actually, it's really obvious. It's trash, dirtiness, whatever you can call. And this is not hard to guess, I think, where it is from. Do you guys have any guess, where this can be from? These pictures? Yeah, true, but maybe a bit more detail about it. Okay. Clubs, yeah, party scene, yeah, perfect. So actually, we are living in a pile of trash. This is my summary about what kind of world we are living in right now, but this is how I see the world right now. And this scene really annoyed me, and after seeing that thing, I'm not partying at all, and I'm just trying to reduce my impact, my footprint in this world, and this can happen just by starting one person, and I'm willing to change this forever. And so starting from that one flower and seeing this scene, I started to dig in more, also because I was a master's student and I was super into sustainability. And what I realized was just more than that. So did you know that the energy consumption of one club equals, during 1 weekend, equals to the whole energy consumption of just one flat household's energy consumption throughout the year. Like, this is a big number, and also this is not the only aspect. All of the clubs in Berlin emit 30 tons of carbon dioxide emissions. Like, these numbers are really big numbers, and there is no joke about it. So I was just like thinking, okay, what I can do about it, and I talked to many people and also my co-founder, and we decided to change this forever. We organized this wonderful event. It was in February, and we did the first sustainable and creative event in Berlin. This happened in one of the clubs in Berlin, and we actually started from flowers. We reused them. We went to many flower shops. We also went to factory and asked, guys, do you have like some flowers that you're about to throw away? Because this is the at least we can do, right? Like, flowers, we don't have to go too far. And we reused them. We reused flowers. It's as simple as that. And we changed the whole ambience into a nature-like venue, and people were feeling that they are engaging with the nature more. And this was not just all of that, for sure. We reduced the energy consumption, we modified the light, we brought more energy efficient DJ sets over there, we recycled cigarette butts, we didn't use plastics at all. We rented palm trees. And also we used sustainable drinks, which were produced sustainably, but at the same time, they were designed by the street artists in Mexico. And these are just like some facts that I can tell you right now, but later, if you guys have any questions, I can tell you more. And this was about the sustainability part, but there's more than that for sure. So we engaged with artists, and this is done by one of the artists of the Factory Artist Circle, and we displayed art over there. So it was not repetitive anymore. You can go there, you can still dance, you can enjoy, but at the same time you can see something different. And actually it was happening. People were coming and asking, like, this is something really nice. And we were like putting some subliminal messages over there, whether about sustainability or being more circular, and people were questioning it. That starting that ignition in people's mind actually worked. And there was something even funnier that at the end of the event, the bouncer and the club owner came and told me that, guys, we never seen this much people at this club. So actually, this was again like life-changing moment for me, because being sustainable and creative is not that hard. It can just start with this one flower, and we don't have to go too far. And also, this was done by one of the artists, and we again reused like the flowers, and this is the stage decoration, for example, and you can just stare at it if you don't want to stare at the art illustration over there. Well, everything was arranged according to this policy, which is use what you have. This is what I believe, and this is the thing where we can start from. And my journey started from reusing a plant, and it pivoted into something else, which I was really beneficial, and giving something to nature instead of taking from it more. But these all happened before Corona, and then the event scene was disrupted. So I was thinking, what can I do about this more without losing my values? My values are about sustainability for sure. It's about also being creative and creating more values for everyone who's involving in this, like artists, creatives. So we thought about creating the first sustainable art platform where artists can sell their art pieces, but there is one crucial part about it, which is we're going to do a life cycle analysis for art pieces, which was never done before, because we are doing life cycle analysis for almost everything, right? Shoes, fabrics, whatever you can imagine. But we are not doing it for art piece, and believe me, art industry is really unsustainable. Like, it's really toxic, not just for the painter, but for the whole environment. So this was also life-changing aha moments, as Rob said, for me. And so we are building this platform right now, and I'm sure it's going to be a super life-changing moment for other people as well. This is my ambition and my goal about changing other people's life as well. And our only condition would be just allowing eco-friendly artists, but we will also allow in the future, as we improve, giving more materials, eco-friendly materials to the artists so that they can build their own recycled paper, recycled canvas, or eco-friendly paints. These are not hard, it's happening, but it should be, I think, under some conditions till we get there, and then I'm sure people are going to be voluntarily doing it. So while I was doing this journey, my understanding from circular economy actually starts with reducing, and it comes to reusing, and then it ends up with the circular patterns, whether you can imagine it in the production lines or in the consumption patterns. But actually what I realized was I was already doing reducing and reusing. And it was the moment when I was writing, while I was writing my master thesis about sustainable fashion, I realized that actually recycling is not that sustainable. Because what businesses understanding from recycling is they are taking a material and then recycling it again. But there is also something missing, because I compared the companies that are recycling their materials in the fashion industry and the other companies that has nothing to do with sustainability, and the outcome is the same. Because the problem starts if you don't design your material in a way that it's not recyclable after you collect it, then the outcome is almost the same. And I also learned that 98% of the green claimed companies are actually doing greenwashing. So this was like, I'm still hopeful, but at the same time, it's kind of heartbreaking moment for me where I was like, okay, then there's another problem that I'm facing with, and I have to solve this. This is my thing, and I always approach the problems with this way, where I have to solve it and bring something more value out of it. So that's why I had another idea, and which is also my passion. And I had the urge of doing that. It's about fashion industry. It's not hard to imagine. What do you see here again?
Garments.
Garments, yeah, right. Pile of basically trash. This is like just one of those piles, and you can imagine like thousands of these piles ending up in the landfill. These are all sweaters. All sweaters that people are not using. So when I saw that picture, this picture is taken from one of my co-founders. And when I saw that picture, we were not back then like co-founders, we were just friends, and I was just like what we can do for this. And we thought about bringing those sweaters and just saving them, because my goal is not to sell or commercialize any product, my goal is to save them. So our journey started like that. My journey that started from one flower, now it's also still about that one flower. I'm still doing that, but now I'm in a phase that it's one sweater right now, and tomorrow maybe it's going to be about one tree, one river, one something else, but I just don't want to see anything dying in front of me or turning into waste, where we need to solve that. I think the problem should start before that, where we can contribute to more things and find better solutions for the future. And when I have the products here, I will let you know, and also about my improvements in my journey. And let's hope for the best for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Damla. Hey guys, Damla is our guest and representative of the Artist Circle tonight. We are joining forces with the Artist Circle often. We like, hanging out together and go to museums and do stuff together. And yeah, thank you for being here, Damla. Thank you for sharing this amazing story. I love the flower and how insightful in party capital of the world, Berlin, what happens in terms of impact out there. So. I saw on YouTube you got a lot of family support from Sami Gurur and Umut Gurur. So it looks like your entire family is on YouTube, which
Turkish
is amazing.
invasion.
It's amazing. Ask them if they have a question for you too. Guys, the microphone is all yours. You know the procedure.
I can sit from there, okay. Any questions?
I think we got a question there, Manon.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, it's either a clarification or an add-on. I'm not sure because maybe I missed the very start. But at the beginning, you were talking about the consumption of electricity in a club night, correct?
Yeah.
And I was wondering, at your event, did you find an alternative solution for electricity?
Yeah, sure.
So I missed that. Okay, sorry.
Maybe I didn't clearly say that, but what we did was we talked to some partners, like business partners, where we can get DJ sets or music sound system where it doesn't consume a lot of energy. So this is basically the solution for the music part, and for the light part, we brought LED lights, which is energy efficient, doesn't consume a lot of light, and we just get rid of like the stage light. So it was kind of dimmed, but still quite bright over there.
I'm just wondering if there's a way to produce electricity in a club through people's movements. I don't
Actually,
know, this was just a thought I had.
No. It's a really beautiful thought, because before Grounded 4, before we jumped into sustainable events, the idea was born from that. Actually, it's the truth. Believe me, we were thinking about like dance floors where you dance, because what you do in the club, you just dance, right? We take that kinetic energy and transform it into electrical energy, right? It's not hard to do, but there's actually one fully sustainable club that is doing that in Amsterdam, but because of the commercialization, like lack of commercialization, the technology is not there. Like in terms of economies of scale, I'm talking about, it's not there yet, and this kind of technology is not applicable to all of the clubs. We realized that, and that's why we had to pivot it, because like we can develop it, but when it's about like commercializing it, it's not happening. That's why we kind of pivoted it. But it started like that. Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Last add-on question: how much energy did you manage to save that way?
I mean, we decreased around like 30 to 40%, because like there is also the fridge, there is also other kind of energy consumption, but I can say it was at least 30 to 40%.
Cool. Yeah. Really awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Tell us when you do the next one.
Of course.
When it's possible again.
It's going to happen like in 1 month or something like that. We're going to bring some like art pieces over there where artists can sell as well. So the creative part and sustainable part will be always there if you see my name over there.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Beautiful. Maybe we can talk Factory Berlin and creating the first generative club in Berlin.
Why not?
Why
not?
Might be a proposal to pitch to them.
Yeah, why not?
Cool. There's a question right there. Please, go ahead.
So back to your club event, because I don't know if you got in contact with the club commission or talked to them, because then you know they developed and are also working on that topic to make clubs more sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, we got involved, get in touch with Clubtopia, Friends of the Earth, and also the other ones. We get the data from them as well. Like we talked a lot. We did like business meetings as well, where we were like discussing what's happening behind the scenes as well. And they are of course trying to do so many things, and they helped us quite a lot. For the technical part, what I mean, like, getting the information and then implementing on this, but the rest was for on us.
Okay,
sure.
great.
Yeah.
Just
it was
an input because it
thank
sounded that.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Very good. Someone else. YouTube. Oh yeah, all the compliments from my family coming in. It was an amazing job. Wonderful presentation. Thank you for this. Yeah. We all love you, Damla. Great job. Thumbs up and, lots of
Thank
X's
you, I
and
love
O's.
you too.
Okay, with that being said, please give a big round of applause. Oh, do we have another question?
Actually, I saw him. He was raising his hand. Yeah,
oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff. Yes, please.
So, since the bulk of your talk was based around litter and being able to incentivize people to recycle, have you thought of solutions whereby we can help to help alleviate that, especially as far as both nightlife is concerned and as far as fashion is concerned? Because I saw your photo with the jumpers in the landfill, and it's part of my my job to sort of as far as like the data science of fast fashion,
Okay.
how I would want to make it more of my of a mission to do the opposite of what I do now, and that would be to sort of incentivize people to buy clothes that will last about 3 times as long, rather than throw something out the next time a new fashion is in, and they've got to buy a new pair of shoes or a top or a jacket or something.
Okay, so if I understand your question right, you're asking like what are the possible sustainable fashion solutions starting from like extending the life cycle of the garment, right? Yeah, I mean, this is where actually the change happens. You are totally right, because we have to extend the life cycle of the garment, because if we use the stuff that we have more, then we have less need to like reuse or those like creating the circular loops, and then we have to recycle less, because everything that we have on Earth has an impact. Even though we are recycling, it has an impact, right? So rather less or more, it has an impact. So actually what you said is totally correct, and I totally agree, because the idea behind getting those sweaters from landfill is just because of that. They are high quality and really durable. I'm talking about high quality fashion brands like Dolce & Gabbana, or you can imagine Burberry sweaters. So they're gonna be like that, because my aim is not promoting high luxury brand or something like that. It's about using more durable products. Because if you are using just starting like that, then we don't need to do the other more, basically. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing presentation, amazing story. Thank you so much.
Thank
Please
you.
give a big hand for Damra.
Thank you so much.
And guys out there on YouTube and here in the room, we've heard 5 speakers and there's one more to come, but I sense the energy level in the room is dropping a little bit. So I ask you to get up on your feet. We'll do a little bit of, what I said in the beginning. It's also the blood flow. It's a circular system too, It's like, so we do a couple of circular movements. It's a circular economy event, right? So, okay, back and forth too. Jump a little bit. Yes, looking good. You guys look amazing. And you on YouTube, you do the same, please, because you've been looking at a screen for a long time. And here comes the kicker for you YouTube people, and you can do this with me. I was diagnosed mid-summer with computer vision syndrome. My eye doctor said, you have computer vision syndrome because my eyes were always hurting. Is that because you don't use your eye muscles too much? You always look at the screen. So he told me this exercise. You basically take your hand, your finger, point it in front of you, and you just follow it with both eyes. And you do like a laying eye, an infinity sign. You just follow it. You don't move your head, you just move your eyes. You go all the way to the periphery, really slowly, all the way to the bottom. Come back up, do the laying eye, come to the left, go down. We do this one more time to move the eye muscles, 8 eye muscles, which move the eyeball. Come back up. Okay, circular movement too, right? Cool, you guys look awesome. Thank you. Okie doke. And now, it gives me great pleasure, last but not least, he is the old lion in the bunch of speakers tonight. Gunther Walden, dear friend, great entrepreneur. In his past life, Gunther held various positions at Siemens. As a matter of fact, Gunther and we lived in the same area in Germany and now live here again. Back then, we didn't know each other when we lived in the Nuremberg-Erlangen area. That was when Gunther worked for Siemens in different industries, automotive, engineering, food and beverage, and water and wastewater. And from some customers in F&B and food and beverage, he learned the necessity, the requirement to get more information about the supply chain or where stuff comes from, because we are very interested in what we put into our bodies, about the origin of products. And then he started to learn about blockchain. And after he, got the idea of blockchain and how this works, then he thought that might be a good solution to tackle the challenges about supply chain transparency in the circular economy. And following his passion for sustainable solution and new technologies, he founded the company, the startup Circular Tree, in 2018. He likes to share his knowledge and ideas as a guest lecturer at universities, at sustainability events, and as an advisory board member and angel investor. He loves cycling, which I can personally confirm, swimming and sailing. Please give a big round of applause for Gunter Walden.
Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you guys for staying in here. I think we heard a number of very interesting presentations, very different angles, very different perspectives. I really like this a lot. Actually, I just learned about biomimicry a year ago or something like this, so it's a very interesting field. Yeah, I want to share with you one more different angle. I want to go more into the corporate perspective and tell you some of the challenges here. If you, oops, okay. If you look, and we've seen this picture over and over again, and it looks quite simple. It looks quite simple, just having a circle and the materials. But if you look a little bit deeper, you see that there are some challenges. If you want to really have a circular economy, you need to have sustainable materials. If you don't have sustainable materials, you cannot get into a circular economy. You need to have a sustainable supply chain. If we look at normal products, I mean, they're typically sometimes hundreds or even 1,000 parts a product is consisting out of. So you have very complex supply chains if you want to make sustainable products. Then, of course, your own manufacturing needs to be sustainable. And you want to have a sustainable use phase. And last but not least, you want to have the recycling sustainable. This is quite often done with chemicals, and a lot of toxic material comes out of recycling. So it's quite a challenging process. To make things worse, there's also a lot of regulation, which the regulation in itself primarily is good, and we've heard before on the European level, the legislation about repairability is really having a good impact. There's also on the European level legislations about substances of very high concern. The same is in other countries, US, China, Japan, but for companies who have a global business model, this is very, very challenging. This is very challenging because every company, or like the EU have different regulations. It's not always the same, so it's very complex. You have health and safety regulations which you need to consider. So the whole topic is very complex for companies. And the only way to really manage this is by digitization. If in the complexity we live in, it's not possible to do this without digitization. And if you go then to the next step, how do you leverage digitization? The first step is you need to connect. You need to connect the actors, and you need to connect the data points, and you need to start collecting data. Once you have the data collected, you need to start analyzing it. And then you can see certain trends. You can use big data methodologies, you can use statistical methodologies whatsoever. And then you come into a reporting phase. In the reporting phase, you can see where do you have weak spots, where do you have problems, and things like this. And out of this reporting phase comes the evolving phase. What can you do to really improve? Because up to the reporting, really nothing positive has happened yet. The positive step really happens in the evolving phase. Use the reports from the data you have generated to find ways to become more sustainable. This is really the process we need to have, and one thing is really we need to have transparency. Without transparency, this is really not possible. Now, what I mentioned in the supply chain, there are many challenges. And just starting with transparency, typically actors in the supply chain have very little interest and incentives to provide transparency. Sometimes it's because of intellectual property, sometimes it's connections to their suppliers which they don't want to disclose. Sometimes they have a competitive advantage where they don't want their competitors obviously to know about it. So typically companies in the supply chain try to keep the information for themselves, and I think Phoebe was talking about that experience in the beginning. The next challenge is traceability. If you have complex supply chains, sometimes from the raw material to the final product, you have 10, 15, 20 intermediate suppliers. And creating this transparency is really, this traceability is really a challenge. We see this a lot, for example, with conflict minerals, where companies are trying to find mines which really have social conditions which are acceptable, but it's very challenging for them to get to this information. Which mines do my raw materials come from? Then the third thing is about trust. If you have data, can you trust that data? How can you be sure that this is real data and not fake data? Then you, of course, have the middleman. This goes very much in combination with the transparency, especially if you have middlemen who are not really adding value to a process. They, of course, really don't have any interest at all of providing transparency, because that would then become obvious and they would be taken out of the system. We need to have interoperability within the systems to really exchange data. We need to tackle the increasing regulatory mindset. We really need to make sure that we can meet all those regulatory requirements without getting over complex. And these are all the challenges in the supply chain, and what Rob has said and what many others have detected before me already is that blockchain really has some means which enable it to tackle some of the challenges of supply chains. We have the topic of traceability and compliance. Blockchain data is really immutable. So you cannot change it after the fact, which really improves trust in the system. You also have flexibility by smart contracts. You have a stakeholder management where you have an opportunity to disintermediate actors. And so there are a lot of things which the blockchain technology brings with it, which make it a good tool to really manage supply chain challenges. Now I want to give you one example which we are just working on, and this is a carbon block example. We've talked a lot about carbon footprint already, and what you hear nowadays is that many companies are claiming that they will become carbon neutral by 2025, 2030, 2035, whenever. The problem is, it's good if they become carbon neutral, but it's not the solution to the problem, because this is typically the large B2C companies which become carbon neutral. But there are reports out there that the product carbon footprint of what they sell, 80% comes to the supply chain. So even if the last supply chain actor becomes carbon neutral, you only get rid of 20%. 80% of the product carbon footprint is still in there. And nowadays, product carbon footprints are also very difficult to get to. You have to do a life cycle analysis, and life cycle analysis, it's a cumbersome methodology, and very often you have to rely on carbon footprint data out of databases. And these databases have the carbon footprint of average suppliers. So you don't get the real carbon footprint of your supply chain, but you have an average value. And what makes things worse is that you cannot really influence this carbon footprint, because you don't get the information directly from your suppliers, but you take it out of average values. And this is where we have designed Carbon Block. And Carbon Block is really something where we want every actor in the supply chain to add the carbon footprint he is adding to the final product. And if we add this all up, then we have a real carbon footprint of the product. And then in the reverse mechanism, a company has an opportunity to go back to its suppliers and tell them, look, I want to become a company with carbon neutral products. You need to support me. You need to reduce your product carbon footprint of the materials, for example, by 20% every year. And then he has a mechanism to track this. This is really the approach of the Carbon Block system. And we have this here a little bit in a simplified version, where really every actor uploads from his suppliers the carbon footprint, then he adds on his own, and then he writes it down into Carbon Block again. And in the end, the OEM then really has a complete product carbon footprint. We have just done a pilot about this project in the connection with the startup Autobahn, and where we had a supply chain from BASF, Motherson, and Porsche. And we were also cooperating with LCA experts in this topic. And if you are interested in finding out further details about this, where we right now still have an NDA, but we are showcasing our pilot project at the expo, I think it's next Wednesday. And there we will really provide the details about this very exciting pilot project. And yeah, afterwards I'll be happy to share more about this. Yes, there is a question. Pardon me?
What's the venue? Whereabouts?
It's digital. It's digital. I can share, I think I will share the link to the venue, and you can sign up and look at it. There are many other actually very interesting startups too, so it's a very exciting event about innovative solutions. Where my personal vision comes from, what we see right now is really, and somebody was saying this before as well, we have many silos where information is really being hidden and not being shared. And this creates a lot of inefficiencies, and it also hinders innovation. It really hinders innovation. If a product designer does not have the details about the materials he's using, how can he design a sustainable product? He needs to have more information at his fingertips to really come up with a design of a sustainable product. Today, it's more about functionality and cost and manufacturability and those criterias. But in the future, we need to have an additional dimension, and this needs to be sustainability. And there, we need to provide the data. And this goes along assets, it goes along actors, and it goes about transactions. And the way we would like to see it is that you really have a traceability of the materials and the information, and then at every level, you have the information you need to really get better, to really improve your own processes, to really improve the product design of what you're doing. And this goes very back to the very first statements also from Phoebe about co-opetition. We need to learn to work together in many aspects. I mean, there will still be competition, but there also needs to be cooperation about sharing of critical data. And in this aspect, we will need to work together. And we can only achieve the sustainable development goals if we work together. If we don't do this, we will not be able to achieve it, because the way or the world is way too complex if everybody just tries to optimize themselves. We need to optimize the whole circle, and we can only do this if we share the data responsibly. Thank you very much.
Please give a big round of applause for Gunther. Amazing business concept. I've been following Circular Tree for quite a while. I love it. Polar Bear loves it too.
Great,
Carbon block.
My biggest fan.
Exactly. So here's a question from Yashar. Thanks for a great talk, Gunther. Do you recommend any good books about supply chain, blockchain technology that discusses sustainability too? Your favorite book list, I think that's what Yashar is after.
I can share that with him, but I cannot tell them on top of my head. Most of them I've read a year ago already.
Okay.
But there is lots of very good documentation. There is also from the Carbon Disclosure Project, they have very excellent reports where you can find lots of sources.
Okay. Yashar, we are already in email contact. I'll put you in contact with Gunther, and then you'll get the book list of good reads on this subject.
Yeah.
Guys, here on site, your opportunity.
Everybody wants to get a drink.
Phoebe.
Thanks for a really, really interesting talk. Gunther, I have one question. Can you tell us the disruption currently that we're undergoing, obviously through COVID? Are you seeing from your perspective any interesting repercussions in terms of perhaps supply chains being forced to be transparent, being cut shorter? Yeah, any comment there?
It's a good question. But I guess I cannot really answer it. I mean, I know from many contacts I have that they really had challenges with interruptions of supply chains. But to be honest, we are not so much in the operative tracking of supply chains. So I cannot tell you this, but generally, it's very clear if we would have more transparency, life would be easier. For example, it's a discussion what we heard about if you look at the Brexit, for example. If you would know where goods are you need in your supply chain and whether they're being held up at customs or not, then you could be better prepared for delays, for example. And this is certainly true also with COVID interruptions. So if you would have more information, that would ease it up.
Well, certainly, I come from France, and I think was it Macron recently declaring he wanted to give incentives to certain industries to bring manufacturing operations back to France, which seems, well, it sort of seems a little bit crazy. But I guess such things could mean that we would have more visibility over supply chains, and they'd be then easier to trace.
Well, this is something very interesting which we were actually discussing with customers. You have, for example, in the US, but also in other countries, you have preferential tax treatment if you have a higher local content. The problem those companies very often have is proving the local content. And very often deliveries get held up in customs because customs are not satisfied with the information they received about the origin of the product. And this is quite a challenge where companies are losing a lot of money, and this is something we are also looking into. And I believe with blockchain this would be good to really provide trusted data which can also be accepted then by customs authorities.
I guess that goes back to your point about the trustworthiness of data. I mean,
yes.
How can you get that guaranteed and verified.
Absolutely.
It's fairly elastic science. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Yep.
I just wanted to address your convergence of logistics and the supply chain and data analytics with blockchain. And the fact is, I happen to have quite a fair bit of working experience in those fields, not blockchain, but there's a bit of skepticism in how they can all merge and sort of see eye to eye on each other. And I was wondering what if you had any ways of popularizing or sort of legitimizing the idea of blockchain within these industries, because I feel like it's something that's that could really go quite a long way. That could go so far in being able to bring these ideas of like data processing into a next level, to another level. So I would be curious to hear your thoughts about it.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I think certainly the high blockchain hype is a little bit over. If you look at these very famous Gardner hype cycle curve, we are way beyond the top. But in a certain sense, it's also good, because now it goes really down to the value so solution can bring. And we still see quite a lot of interest in companies trying to figure out whether they can materialize this value. I mean, this is still to be proven. We have done this in a pilot project, but there are many other companies also out there, startups as well as bigger companies who have prototype blockchains running. And I think we will see an adoption within a few years where it's really gonna come. That's my personal opinion. But you're absolutely true. In the hype cycle curve, it's gone beyond the top, and now the solution need to prove that they have advantages which other solutions don't have, and then it will come. Yes?
I got a question here. Thank you. A good question. So the proof is in the pudding, in the doing.
I'm going to put a little spanner in the works because it's my role in life. So this is Bitcoin, but a single Bitcoin transaction using blockchain technology, uses roughly 223,250 grams of carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour. And that's the equivalent of burning through 14-gallon tanks of gasoline in the average American car. I'm sure this is a comment you've come up against before. So how are you, in applying blockchain to circular economy, thinking about the environmental impact of software consumption?
Thank you really for that question. I'm really glad it came up, and it typically comes up sooner or later. And you're absolutely right. I don't know the exact figures yet, but very clearly Bitcoin is, from an energy consumption and sustainability perspective, very clearly, in my personal opinion, unacceptable. But you have to dig a little bit deeper. The technology Bitcoin is using is proof of work. This is really, they have thousands or hundreds of thousands of computers doing really very difficult mathematical challenges to really ensure that nobody can fake the system. And this is because Bitcoin is an open system, and they use a proof of work algorithm. The blockchain we are using and most others in the B2B area are not open systems, but they're really private blockchains, and there are other consensus algorithms like proof of stake, for example, or proof of authority, where you don't have this disadvantage of the excessive energy consumption. So we, in those databases, are comparable to normal distributed databases. So thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to take this off the table, because it's a very valid point.
Really good question, good answer too. Anyone else? Last call for questions. Or you all want to go get a drink?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, I see people nodding. Okay, YouTube land. Last chance for you too, before you can go to the fridge. Get a drink too. Give him 3 seconds, because that's the delay. Okay, please
3,
give a
2,
big
1.
round of applause for Gunther. Thank you, Gunther.
Thank you very much, Rob.
Awesome. And with this being said, thanks again for joining us tonight, all of you here in the audience. Thanks to our 6 amazing speakers. Please give a big round of applause again for our 6 who rocked the stage, inspired us. And also thank you again, Charlotte. Thank you, Factory Berlin. Thank you, Roman, who's making sure we were understandable today and visible on YouTube. And lit enough. And with that being said, like I said in the beginning, let's all get a drink at the bar. Please make sure you obey to the distancing rules, so no more than 10 people at the bar, please. Grab your drinks, and then let's proceed down into the Summerly courtyard, and let's continue the conversation. Thank you, guys. Meet you down there in the courtyard. Appreciate it.